Yeah, welcome everybody to our fifth and final episode of the PERFECOAT webinar series. Today's title is Painting a Bio-Based Future with PERFECOAT. My name is Verena Kuhlmann from nova-Institut, and we led and lead the communication work package within the PERFECOAT project. For those who couldn't attend the previous webinars, there are video recordings to find on the PERFECOAT homepage, and you can find all slides and recordings there and learn more about the project. Some housekeeping rules for today. We have some time for Q&A at the end of all presentations, but you can enter your questions during the webinar in the Q&A field below and address the speaker by using @ and then the name of the speaker. And if you would like to voice your question verbally, you can raise your virtual hand. This is today's agenda, and we are happy to have 9 speakers from the PERFECOAT Research Consortium, and we will start with a presentation from Alexander Wentzel. He is Chief Scientist at SINTEF Industry, Department of Biotechnology and Nanomedicine in Trondheim, Norway. He joined SINTEF in 2010, and Alexander has a broad background in molecular biology and industrial biotechnology, and a current main research focus on applying biotechnology for new sustainable solutions for the bioeconomy. Alexander is head of the project coordination team of the PERFECOAT project at SINTEF. I hand over to you, Alexander, and I will stop my presentation. I think you can share now.
Mm-hmm. Right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Very good. Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction, Verena. I just want to give a very brief introduction to the PERFECOAT project. I will keep it short because it's already kind of introduced in more detail in the beginning of that webinar series. But I have still a few slides to remind those who haven't seen it before about what the project is about. So the PERFECOAT project is a project under the Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking, which was addressing the proposal to improve the sustainability of coatings in 2020 and was delivered in 2021 and started that year with the title High Performance Bio-Based Functional Coatings for Wood and Decorative Applications. It's a research innovation action at the TRL range of 3 to 5. And for details about the project, you can visit our website, which is given here. So the project is implemented by a consortium of 12 partners from 7 countries. Among those are 8 commercial partners, and this really shows also the industrial drive of this project, despite of the low TRL level that we are working on. The project is coordinated by SINTEF here in Norway, and we are approaching the end of the project now after 41 months until the end of next month. The total budget was 6.25 million euros with a contribution from the public funders by 5 million euros. The primary goal of the PERFECOAT project was to develop the validated new generation of industrial wood and decorative coatings with more than 25% bio-based content. And that to achieve that, of course, we had to address the major components of coatings, which is mainly the binders, the fillers, and the pigments. That has been implemented by building a flexible technology platform, which produces different new bio-based binders, fillers, and pigments from a range of biopolymers and functional materials and test them in real coating formulations in order to assess the performance. As you see here, this platform on the right side, there's a lot of processes that are based on biotechnology using lignocellulosic feedstock as the starting point. But we also have some aspects on polymers from marine and lignocellulosic biomass, and also an aspect on functional nanomaterials. By producing these base compounds, we performed the platform for the functionalization using chemical, microbial, biocatalytic approaches. And all developments of these ingredients and also the formulations was guided by performance, safety and economic assessment, as well as environmental, social and quality assessment to get into new coatings for 3 markets. It was the UV curable clear coats, and it was do-it-yourself waterborne trim paints and wall paints that we had as the main target markets. And with this, I just like to hand over to the colleagues here to present some of the results that we have achieved. And some of those are repetitive from the previous webinars, some are new. And but I think together with the previous issues of this webinar series, I think it will give you a good impression about where we are so close to the end of this project. And with this, I just hand back to Verena. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander. The first 2 speakers are Srdjan Gavrilović and Morten Frøseth. Srdjan has a background in molecular genetics and genetic engineering, and later did his PhD on plant microbe interaction during symbiosis establishment. He joined TalTech in 2021 and is currently working in the field of metabolic engineering, where he aims to learn, understand, recreate, and design new harmonic bio-based systems. And Morten Frøseth holds a PhD in organometallic organic chemistry and works as a research scientist at SINTEF in Norway. He's working with different kinds of chemistry involving projects ranging from catalyst development and inorganic chemistry to organic chemistry, mostly related to biomass conversion and sustainable chemistry. The floor is yours, Srdjan and Morten.
Verena, thank you very much. Could you please approve my video? Our system is saying that I cannot start video without your approval.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, this binder session is going to be hosted by me and my colleague Morten. We're going to cover a bit different aspects of the topic. I myself, I'm a biologist, and I'm going to mostly provide you insights on the way how we produce the raw materials for those binders in a sustainable way from renewable sources. And then it's going to be followed by Morten to provide you information on chemistry, how we modify those naturally occurring polymer in new generation polymers for binder in coatings. Okay. So when we talk about coatings, they are kind of, it's an umbrella term to cover multiple different substances that we use to protect surfaces and provide them certain look, either in the context of texture or color. The current market, how is it been real life established, is predominated by fossil-based ingredients. Europe is kind of ahead of the rest of the world in the context of percentage of the coating materials being bio-based. However, it's still significantly based on fossil and non-renewable sources. If you look at your right corner, similar thing like Alexander showed, this is breakdown of current formulations, what type of ingredient consists the formulation in what percentage, and we are focusing on these 3 groups: binders, extenders, fillers, and pigments. And I'm going to be just touching on the binder section in this context. So what are binders? It's kind of for binder to be efficient in formulation, it needs to have certain properties, one being in relatively inert, stable, monomeric or dispersed form in a formulation that can provide certain shelf life. It in applied and cured form, it polymerizes and forms stable structure that form protective film and hold other ingredients in the coating. It has good adhesion to substrate and surfaces that it's applied, and it has good coloring and property, or holds the pigment and different parts. Here I just listed, not for necessarily for the purpose of this renewable binder that we're gonna discuss today, but I listed a few different chemical groups that are used as common binders in currently market available formulation. Some of them is, you can see, let's say for the bottom one, chlorinated rubber. It's a binder that is being produced from natural rubber by depolymerization and stabilized in a form that is appropriate for repolymerizations once it is applied on the surface. However, we wanted to push further current state, because the way how we use non-renewable sources, we already know that we're gonna run out of them, and in the context of well, quality of life for all of us, we need to come up with new solution and to innovate in such way that we can sustain further life development and existence. Here I would like to start to give you an insight how we produce those binders. If you see here, those are groups of waste materials that we use here at TalTech for production of different polymers. Our main component, main feedstock is waste wood from forestry, wood processing industry that is quite developed here. We also are quite advanced with food waste, food and food scrap processing. However, one of the technology that I'm particularly excited is gas fermentation using just municipal waste and kind of a lumped trash where it's very undefined. If it has carbon, if it can burn, we can use it to generate more or less food grade biomass. And here on the bottom, I would just like to point one recent achievement, kind of scientifically interested for everybody who has a fireplace or some incinerator or everything. If you smell a chimney, it has acidic smell to it. The reason is that there's a lot of volatile components that escape combustion and just settle in the chimneys. Many of those are, for example, significant fraction are short chain carboxylic acids, and we literally developed technology that we can feed them to microbe to produce different things. This is how it looks on the top. You can see after fermentation on wood, hydrolyzed wood sugars, and centrifuging, how we collect biomass in the lab. We can dry it and formulate it in a different way, and then fractionate it further. Our kind of one of sustainable goals is not to have to have zero waste. Everything that we produce in the bioreactor, it's considered resource. We at the moment starting a collaboration to use this liquid leftover that is on the top for additional feeding into algae and cyanobacteria reactors to be essentially additional substrate for autotrophic organisms. But when it comes to already established technology, that is, these are dried pellets of the biomass, we fractionate them and separate different classes of molecules. One being especially relevant for this project are lipids. They can be used either as dietary lipids, food supplements in burgers, replacement for cocoa butter, things like that. They can be reacted into different types of binders, plastics and polymers, similar things. Once when you extract the lipids, there's percentage-wise, there's a lot of proteins that can be used for extracted and used for food and feed, pigments that are relevant for antioxidative purposes and food coloring purposes, and eventually what ends up being left is chitin and nucleic acid that can be used as a fiber. This project in kind of how different partners on this project also contributed by researching and developing different raw materials and then processes for the production of raw materials, agricultural materials, the shrimp from Dublin Bay, leftover from food industry or wood chips, and they're being processed by a combination of biological and chemical means to appropriate form, either to feed microbes or to break them down and isolate polymers directly. We here are focusing on growing microbes from depolymerized biomasses. This is more or less kind of a figure of overview what we've been working mainly with. Here on your left, you can see different xylan isolation procedures from using different methods, and it's possible to isolate materials of different chemical and physical properties that are more or less applicable for individual purposes. However, they all give a wider range of possible application and more appropriate choice of the material for the given application. On the top, you can see different fractions isolated from shrimp leftovers shells, chitin and chitosan. On the bottom, you can see this blood red thing. It's not a blood, it's oil isolated from our microbes, here grown on waste wood hydrolysate. And on the right, you can see SINTEF's alginate that is produced in bacteria, and that gives them possibility to control composition of individual monomers in the alginate, and in such way provide polymers of higher quality. One thing before concluding, I would like to say that for me, this project's been a very learning process, and what I ended up very surprised, the variety of possibilities to combine individual raw ingredient that we tested for binders to produce novel materials. Here, if you see on the very left figure, it's a way how paint industry is testing suitability of certain coating formulation by applying them on the surface and then testing different properties, for example, transparency, adhesion, and things like that. This candidate, as you can see, has no sticking possibility. If you think of it as classical paint, you don't want to paint anything that is going to fall off. However, by just reconsidering things that there's very good material for that, potentially is very good material for the other application. For example, applying them to surfaces where material shouldn't stay for long. Let's say mobile, when you buy your mobile, you have a plastic protection on the surface. Similar materials can provide a range of protective properties for shipping and kind of a packaging different items. It goes beyond today's talk, but we got materials of very, very different properties that I'm positive could eventually lead to development of novel application and bio-based application, more sustainable application in a variety of fields, replacing currently used fossil-based materials. With that, I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Morten. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Just find the presentation. As mentioned, the scope of the PERFECOAT project is to use bio-based compounds, for example, the ones that are mentioned by Srdjan here, to increase the bio content in paints and coatings in the painting industries. Coatings and paints are quite complex mixtures, as also already indicated both by Alexander and Srdjan, where you have different type of functionalities mixed together in a formulation. We are focusing on only the binder part here, as mentioned, and we have also narrowed the focus to two types of coatings and paints. That's the wood-based coatings. Let me see, I need pointer. Sorry. The wood, the coatings for wood applications like furnitures, where we use UV curing as an important part of the process. And then we have the water-based binders, which are used for more architectural paints. And the bio-based compounds that we have that have been mentioned can not be used directly, usually. So we have to do some modifications, and we do the modification to fulfill the requirements of the final products, whether it's UV curing or water-based applications. And the typical requirements are the chemistry, how it binds and reacts and polymerizes, viscosity, the durability of the final paint. If you get scratch in the paint, it's not interesting. Optical properties, of course. If you have this red oil that Srdjan showed, it cannot be used in a white paint. Smoothness and solubility also in the total formulation of the painting. We have some type of polymer materials that we have looked into, and that's the alginate. You see the structure up at the right corner here. We have the xanthan, where you can see also here. We have the xylans, which with a molecular structure like this. And we have the lipids, which of course is a bit different from the carbohydrate-based compounds that are mentioned above. There are some similarities here that we will use in the further process. But first, we have done some pre-selection on what to focus on in the further development. So alginate and xylans are mainly focused toward water-based coatings, where there and alginate also towards the UV curable binders, as well as xanthan and saccharides and lipids. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the main chemistry here is quite similar for most of these compounds. We have the OH groups and the carboxylic acids groups in xylan. In the saccharides, we have OH groups. And alginates, we have acid groups and OH groups. So we will use these as kind of attack points, reactive sites to do functionalization. The OH groups we can esterify by reacting with organic acids. They can be short and short chained or long chained, depending on the final property that we want. And we can even use the fatty acids that's also produced in the project to kind of get the alkyd look-alike material in the end. The carboxylic groups can also be reacted into esters or amides by reacting with alcohols or amines, which also can add hydrophobicity or other functionalities, for example, towards UV curing by introducing acrylic acids of different variations. It is also important that we can do the chemistry directly on the carbohydrate cycle here, but we quite often need a linker between the biopolymer or bio product and the actual functionality that we want to use as a cross-binder. We have also looked into another strategy when we talk about the xanthan gums. There we have actually modified, or I say we, that's the Technical University of München. They have modified the bacteria that produces the xanthan to change the final functionalities of the biopolymer. So they can tune the properties by introducing more acetyl groups in the final product, or even add acrylic functionalities into the system that can be used in UV curing of a final product. At the end, we have the fatty acids, lipids, oils. Usually they are well known in the paintings industry, but then usually as a alkyd, where you have functionalized polyester with a fatty acid chain. In this project, we have been thinking a bit differently. We have tried to change the reactivity of the saturation of the lipids. For example, by introducing epoxide, which can be used further to introduce, for example, acrylic acids that can be UV cured. The picture at the right here shows the change, which is quite important also, from the crude oil that we got to the epoxidized oil. So we see that the epoxidized oil has been much changed color from dark reddish to quite clear, which is an important change. We see here also some final resin, solid resins that's been produced. We lack some on the to control the reactivity. This example here is by reacting the epoxide with anhydrides, but it has to be cured at 120 degrees. But we are trying to change that to be possible to cure at room temperature. And at the right here, we see a acrylic polymer, which cured too fast. So we also have to look here into the reactivity of the final product. But it's promising results. An important factor in the PERFECOAT project has to be in the communication between the different partners. We have made a lot of different binders and modified biocompounds. And we can do that for a long time, but we need to check it with the end users Evonik, Remmers, Organochemia, whether it gives the correct properties of the final product. So we have sent samples to them. They feed us with information on how it goes, and we do changes and send new samples back to the end users. In PERFECOAT, we have established flexible technology platform to produce bio-based binders, which need to be developed further, but that we will do. We have established biotechnical processes to produce the feedstock for the binders. And we have also managed to raise the bio content of some binders towards the goal of the project above 25 weight%, and that's good. And I'm personally looking forward to following projects to take this further to become a real product. Thank you.
Thank you, Morten and Srdjan. And the next speaker is Yang Park. She did her PhD at INRAE in France, joined the Imperial College of London for a postdoc, and participated on the PERFECOAT project to develop Gavrilović lipolytica to produce terpenes and pigments. Since April 2023, she started her own lab coziness at INRAE in France, focusing on sustainable bioproduction by synthetic biology. Welcome, Yang.
Thanks for the introduction. So I'm Yang Park. Today I'm going to talk about the bio-based pigment work package in the PERFECOAT project. So in this work package, we have 3 different partners: Imperial College London with Rodrigo Ledesma Amaro and myself, and TalTech with Petrian and Srdjan, and the startup company Chromologics. So in this work package, we have 2 different objectives. First objective is to develop high-producing non-conventional yeast to produce a pigment, mostly orange and purple color. And second objective is to develop different formulation of the pigment based on red color by Chromologics. So I'm gonna start with the first objective, to develop non-conventional yeast to produce pigment. So in order to produce pigment from yeast strain by metabolic engineering, we need the information of the genes which can synthesize pigment compound. So mostly we are getting this information from natural sources. And then once we identify the genes which are involved in synthetic pathway for pigment, we apply these genes into the chassis strain, here the non-conventional yeast. And by metabolic engineering of their native metabolism together with the biosynthetic pathway, we can synthesize pigment compound from this yeast chassis strain. And then after precise fermentation, we can improve the production and efficiency of the pigment production. So for this purpose, in this work package, we use 2 different chassis strain. So first of all, Imperial College London use Gavrilović lipolytica, and TalTech in Estonia use rhodotorula toluloid as a chassis strain. So these 2 yeast strains are non-conventional yeast, which are quite different from the conventional yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, but they are also safe to use in biotechnology application. So they already get the certification from GRAS and QPS status. And both yeast strain has a special property that accumulating high amount of lipid inside of their cells, which is really beneficial for the pigment production because they are sharing some precursor for the pigment. So to begin with rhodotorula toluloid, this rhodotorula toluloid, as I mentioned, they can accumulate high amount of lipid. So their lipid synthesis metabolisms are quite well studied. And also, together with the metabolic engineering, this yeast has been engineered to produce different types of lipid, as you can see from this image. But as well as lipid, they can also synthesize carotenoids with their native metabolism. So in this rototolatoid, they don't need to overexpress beta-carotene synthetic pathway. So TalTech directly start the controlled fermentation to have this pigment compound. So after optimizing the fermentation condition, they can have this biomass, which already have the orange color with the pigment. And after the extraction, you can see this orange colored pigment paste. But in case of the Yarrowia lipolytica, they don't naturally produce beta-carotene. So in order to produce beta-carotene in Yarrowia lipolytica, we need a little bit of the metabolic engineering. But this Yarrowia lipolytica already has been engineered to produce many different types of products at industry and in academia. So traditionally, they have been used to produce proteins and lipids and some organic acid due to their high flux to TCA cycles. But more recently, by the progress of synthetic biology, this yeast has been engineered to produce many different types of terpenoid, which can be used as a binder in coating materials. And also they can be used for producing amino acid derivatives like violacane, which have purple color, which can be used as a pigment. So with this Yarrowia lipolytica, we started to engineer their metabolism. So Yarrowia lipolytica already have this precursor pathway to FPP from acetyl-CoA, which called mevalonate pathway. So we use this native mevalonate pathway together with heterologous pathway to synthesize beta-carotene. So we merged this native pathway together with the heterologous pathway, and then we succeed to synthesize beta-carotene pathway, as you can see from this image. So Yarrowia lipolytica white type strain is not producing beta-carotene, so they show just white colony. And after the engineering, we can see clearly the orange color of colony that producing beta-carotene. And then we try to improve the production of beta-carotene. So for that, we applied 3 different strategies. So first strategy is to engineer promoter strengths to improve the beta-carotene gene expression. So for that, we use different types of promoters, which have a different repeat number of UAS. These are upstream activating sequence, which can help to strengthen the strength of the promoter itself. So once we express our beta-carotene expressing cassette under different promoter, we can see 8 UAS PTEF show the highest production of beta-carotene. And then we wanted to see if we increase further the copy number of this 8 UAS PTEF, if we can improve the production of beta-carotene. So for that, we try to express this gene expression cassette up to 3. And when we express them, we could observe the best titer from double copy of the beta-carotene expression cassette. And when we express one more expression cassette, we can see the decrease of the beta-carotene titer. So from here, we select double copy number of beta-carotene cassette as our best performing strain. And then the last strategy to improve the production of beta-carotene was engineering the native pathway. As I mentioned earlier, we merged native precursor pathway together with the beta-carotene synthesis pathway. So we know what kind of genes are involved in this upper stream pathway. So we try to overexpress several genes in this mevalonate pathway individually or combinatorially. And as you can see from this result, this is strain YLB13, which overexpress HMG reductase, show the best titer of the beta-carotene production. And apart from this beta-carotene, we also try to synthesize different color of the pigment, which is violacine. So this violacine can be naturally produced from bacteria, but their production is quite low. So we wanted to produce violacine at high yield in Yarubia lipolytica. So as Yarubia lipolytica doesn't have any biosynthetic gene for violacine, we need to express all this gene cassette. So for that, we need 5 different genes. So if we express only VOABE, tryptophan can be converted to protodeoxyviolacinic acid, which are green. So when we overexpress only these 3 genes, we can see green color of the colony. But when we overexpress all these 5 genes, tryptophan can be converted to violacine. So here you can see the violet color of colony that's showing Yarubia lipolytica is producing violacine. And then once we cultivate our cells, we can see the purpled biomass. And after the extraction of the pigment, we can also have this pigment paste. And then we wanted to know this Yarubia biomass with the pigment can be used as a pigment itself, as a pigment in industry. So we collaborate with our partner, Evonik, to analyze this Yarubia biomass for their solubility, grinding power, tinting strength, and fading effect. And from there, we confirm that we need improvement of particle sizes. Especially Yarubia is changing their morphology from yeast form to filamentous form. So their cell size are not even. So we need to control their morphology to make the unified particle sizes. And we also observed the fading effect after light exposure. So we need a little bit more of the improvement to prevent this fading effect. And as I said earlier, we have another objective to develop the different formulation of pigment. So for that, Chromologics, our startup company, has been developed these 2 different formulations. So Chromologic already produced red pigment from their filamentous fungi. And then they developed this formulation to have different form, water soluble and water insoluble. So their property as a pigment will be discussed by Christine from Evonik in the next section. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Park. And the next speaker is Brian Wabende from Kenya. He has been in Norway since 2005. He's educated in physics, chemistry, materials science, and he took a master in materials chemistry at the University of Oslo and a master in renewable energy with a focus on hydrogen. He worked in Oslo municipality and was a trainee and employee at SINTEF and now works at BioEnvision. Welcome, Brian. You can share your screen.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. My name is Brian Wabende and I work for BioEnvision Technology AS. And today I'll be talking about functional materials that have been used in the PERFECOAT project. And the nanomaterial that I'll be focusing on is polyhedral oligomeric silicesquioxane, POS. And my talk will include an introduction into POS and BioEnvision and the progress that's been made so far in the project, and then a conclusion. So the purpose of POS is to improve the hydrophobicity of the coating and also through UV curing, improve the mechanical strength of the coating. So what is POS? POS is a hybrid organic and organic branch polymer with organic substituents and the silica core. And just a moment, need a laser pointer. From this picture, you can see the silicon oxygen, the silica core, and the organic substituents are the R groups attached, known as the arms. And POS is made up of mixed cage structures. The most prominent are T8 cage, T10, and T12, which number 8 means that it has 8 silicon atoms in every corner of the cage. T10 has 10 silicon, 12 has 12. And the organic arms are modified and tailored based on the desired functionalities the one wishes to have. And POS also improves the performance without compromising the mechanical properties of the matrix in which it is put into, provides high performance and at low dosages, and also provides thermostability and UV stability, which is brought about by the silica cage. And yeah, as mentioned before, it is made up of a silica cage and the R group, the arms. They can be either reactive or non-reactive. An example of just a few examples of reactive R groups are aminopropyl, vinyl, methacrylate, acrylate, and so forth. And non-reactive groups are usually alkyl groups, which could include methyl, propyl, and isobutyl, and onwards. The advantages and benefits of POS is that one, it is made using a cost-efficient soldier process, and it is also a versatile technology platform. As you can see by just choosing whichever R groups you want, you can change its performance to fit your needs. And it also comes in solid solutions, emulsions, and dispersions. It is a high-performing nanotechnology. I'm going to give a short introduction to how POS is synthesized. The main ingredients are organoalkoxysilanes, water, catalyst, and solvent. And in this picture, you see an example of an organoalkoxysilane where the X is the alkoxy. And the soldier process is a hydrolysis condensation process to form the POS cage. And the catalyst that is usually used is a base. And here we have a few pictures of where POS is born. I see a small scale reactor around 500 ml and a 2-liter reactor and a pilot scale reactor, which is a 30-liter reactor. The physical states of POS vary. You have viscous liquids. You can have it in solid form, and you can also have it as a powder, which you just get from crushing the solid form of the POS. BioEnvision technology is located in Porsgrunn in Norway at the Harrow Industry Park. And yeah, the park has 80 businesses, 2,500 employees, and it ranges from startups to large-scale industries. And the main areas of application of POS in BioEnvision are flame retardants, which is the DPIA portfolio. And you also have water repellent / gas and moisture barrier, which is the Nano platform. And these are some of the polymer technologies in which DPIA technology has been confirmed. We have polyvinyl chloride, polypropylene, polyurethane, and adhesives. And where there's more opportunity, we have example polycarbonate, polystyrene, polyethylene, and so on. Okay. Here I give an example of a DPIA, which is the flame retardant used in a polyurethane form. The top row of pictures that you see here are a form that is fire tested without any fire retardant additives. And as you can see, it burns completely. The second row shows a a row of pictures where the foam has a standard fire retardant additive, and you see that it burns less and retains its structure. The last row here is with 1.5 DPIR with standard plus standard fire retardant additives. And as you can see, the flame height is even lower than with the standard fire retardant, and also the structure is better preserved. And next here, we see performance of DPIR in highly plasticized PVC. The top row is without DPIR. And as you can see, the flame height is really high, and also there is some sagging in the film. The PVC with 1 PHR DPIR, you can see that the flame height is not as high, and also there is virtually no sagging, so the film retains its structure. Now we go into the part where POS was used in the project. And the first part was testing the synergism between POS and another nanomaterial used in this project, which is microfibrillated nanocellulose, MFC, which is used as a rheology modifier. The MFC that we used is called Exilva, which was provided by Borregaard. It is 100% bio-based. And as you can see, that there's a homogeneous dispersion between POS and MSV. In addition, the viscosity tests were performed by SINTEF of the dispersion containing POS and hydrophilic POS and the MFC. And this was done over a period of 1 month, where the first blue graph shows the viscosity after 1 day, and the red one shows the viscosity after 7 days, while the green one shows the viscosity after 1 month. And you see that there is virtually no change in viscosity over that time period. This slide shows the comparison between the viscosity of the MFC plus POS and just pure MFC. And as you can see, there isn't a huge change in viscosity. There's a slight increase in viscosity just due to additional solid content. The next test was a synergism between hydrophobic POS and MFC. And we have a picture here in which the green vials are the ones which have a deformer in it, while the orange ones had no deformer in it. And the middle vials are the ones which have just been recently shaken, while the ones at the edges here, at the ends, are the ones which have been left to stand over time. And as you can see, that the mixture without deformer already separates, while the one with the deformer is stable, forms a stable emulsion. And this is just a top view of the emulsion. The next test was the synergism between hydrophilic POS and alginates, which was done at SINTEF. From this picture, where different hydrophilic POS, 2 different hydrophilic POS were used, and at different amounts, we can see that they all form homogeneous mixtures and are thereby compatible. And the alginate used here is going to be used as a biobinder in the coating. Here tests were done to test the hydrophobicity of the coating with and without POS. The first row here shows the contact angles of water droplets, which are 10 microliters, before watering or immersing the coating in water, while the bottom one shows the contact angle after the immersions into water for 24 hours. And you can see with no pores, the effect of pores is not great compared to the coating without pores. And we can also see that the hydrophobicity decreases with time, and the time used here is 180 seconds. And the same can be said after washing or after being immersed, after the coating was immersed in water for 24 hours. Next here was the testing of mechanical strength using UV pores. UV pores was put into the coating, and the coating was placed into substrate, and the Martindale anti-scratch test was done on it. The first picture shows a coating without any filler, and the second one shows coating with the 7.5% benchmark filler, while the last one is 7.5 UV pores uses a filler. In the first one, you see there's a lot of scratches in the coating after the test is done, and there's less scratches in the benchmark filler, and even less scratches in the UV pores coating, which shows that there's an improved effect of mechanical strength of the coating due to the UV pores as compared to the other two. Next, we try to see if there was any synergistic effect between the benchmark and the pores. And here we have 7.5% of the benchmark filler plus 7.5% of UV pores. And while the other one is just 15% benchmark filler, and the last one is 15% UV pores. And as you can see, like increased amount of pores does not really necessarily lead to better mechanical strength. And compared to the 15% benchmark filler, there isn't a greater synergistic effect between the pores and the filler. In conclusion, we see that the hydrophobicity did not significantly improve after pores inclusion, while there was good synergy between pores, both the hydrophilic and hydrophobic pores and MFC, and there was also good synergy between pores and alginates. And low amounts of pores have a significant effect on the mechanical strength of the coating. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Brian. Just a short reminder to the participants that you can post your questions if you have any into the Q&A section or in the chat. Let's switch to the next presentation from Andy Booth and Kamal Azrague. Andy Booth is Chief Scientist in Environmental Chemistry at SINTEF Ocean with strong experience in developing analytical approaches and studying the fate and effects of chemical and particulate contaminants. He has a particular focus on investigating the degradation and leaching of plastic-associated chemicals and is an active member of the international research community on plastics. And Dr. Kamal Azrague is a senior researcher at SINTEF. His expertise covers a wide range of activities related to environmental issues, including water treatment, waste management, and sustainability assessment with the use of LCA and LCC. He is experienced in leading and participating in complex interdisciplinary projects at the national and European level. Thank you, Kamal and Andy.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I'll take the first part of this presentation, and then Kamal will take the sustainability part. So this is going to move there, yeah. So Yeah, I was responsible, or SINTEF Ocean were responsible for conducting the safety and the toxicity assessment and selecting the methodology for doing that within the PERFECOAT project. So I always like to sort of, when we have a general audience, always kind of like to remind folks or why we conduct safety testing. So some of the primary reasons are to safeguard human health, to reduce the environmental impact of the chemical or material that you're developing, and to ensure that you're compliant with regulatory requirements. But of course, what we're also needing to do when we're doing the safety assessment is we're trying to also maintain optimal product performance. So we've got this sort of balance that we're trying to find where we're getting the best product performance possible without compromising too significantly on human health and environmental impacts. So this is when we approach these sort of safer and sustainable by design concepts, this is what we have in the back of our mind when we're developing the approaches. Just a little on the importance of why we should go with early toxicity testing. If you integrate or the safety assessment quite early on in the technology or the materials chemical development process, it can help you identify or make no-go decisions quite early. And this, from a cost-effective perspective, this can be quite important because you can prevent time loss on the development of molecules and materials that turn out to have non-favorable toxicity profile. So the sooner you know that in the process, the better it is. You can look elsewhere for alternatives. It also gives you an improved overall toxicity profile from the start materials through the intermediates to your final materials. So you also get to see where potentially any problems might be occurring in the process. And that can also be very good from a time and cost perspective. Can provide guidance for further testing, obviously can facilitate compliance with regulatory requirements. So you know that you're not going to be faced with trying to meet regulatory requirements with a finalized product that doesn't have an acceptable level of safety. And of course, it's a marketable feature for your product if you can, particularly if we're talking here bio-based products, if you can demonstrate the safety of the material or chemicals. So the chemical safety assessment that we developed within PERFECOAT was housed or placed under task 6.1, and here we conducted a comparison, or is still in the process. Actually, we're right at the end of the project, but we're just finalizing this piece of work. It's conducting a comparison of the chemical exposure risk between the new and the non-bio-based fossil fuel based conventional materials that are used today. Now, this is really, really important in my opinion, because we can tox test anything and we can generate a number, but unless we're benchmarking it against something to see if we've got a better or a worse or the same situation, then that number can be a bit difficult to use in a meaningful way. So it's important here that we're also including the existing materials in the testing strategy. And then, of course, what we're trying to do is identify and propose substitution of chemicals that are identified as having the highest risk, or at least being a high risk. Ideally, we don't identify any high-risk chemicals, but where that is the case, at least we know about it. So the general workflow, we take in the new generation bio-based materials and their ingredients, and we do the same for the existing coating material formulations. We subject them to two main assessment criteria, which we use for hazard. The first is exposure. Here we do, in this project, we chose a leaching assessment because we're interested, or we thought that the highest exposure risk comes from the leaching of chemicals from the final product formulations. So we want to know what leaks out. And because there's a potential for human contact with these particular types of coatings, especially considering their applications, we opted for a skin sensitization assessment for the toxicity part of the risk assessment. So when we combine the two the results from these two assessment approaches, we're able to make a risk assessment and ranking that we can then take forward for the biopolymer coating development and to help us make the safest component selection choices. So just briefly about the two experimental approaches that we used. So with the leaching studies here, because we're in this sort of luxury situation, we know what ingredients we're putting into these formulations. So we have an ingredient list. What we don't necessarily know is which of those ingredients are going to stay locked away in the coating and which ones are more mobile and may leach out. We conduct aqueous leaching. I've just used bisphenol A as a very general example of a chemical and how we would follow this. So we would put the coating material on a glass slide and then a substrate, and then we incubate this in water for a period of time, and then we analyze the water. To do that, we do a combination of target and non-target screening by liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry. So for the target screening, in our hypothetical case here, we've got bisphenol A. We know bisphenol A is an additive, so we can look specifically to see if bisphenol A is in the water. But of course, these materials can be subject to different processes and environments that can cause degradation or changes, and that can lead to the presence of chemicals that weren't specifically added, what we call non-intentionally added substances. And in this case, these would be degradation products of bisphenol A, and we can sort of identify these through a non-target analysis using the same instrumentation. When it comes to the skin sensitization test, what's really nice about this one, it's a standard test. It's internationally recognized. It's from the OECD. And what's really cool about it is that even though it's a toxicity test, it does not involve a single cell of biological material. Everything is done through mimicking the chemical reactions for skin sensitization. So we can do this again with the LCMS instrumentation. So one of the first things that we did in the project was to take some of the sort of validate our method, was to take some of the known ingredients, or at least ingredients that were being considered for use in the formulation of some of the bio-based coatings, and we applied this to the skin sensitization test. And then we were able to cross-reference some of them with databases where there was already skin sensitization data available. And in those cases, we found good agreement between what has been reported already and what we found in our labs. So that was good, validated the method, and then we were also able to generate new data for those ingredients or chemicals that did not have skin sensitization data available already. The only downside to this method is that it works nicely for chemicals. It's a challenge for chemical mixtures. I'll go into that in a little bit in a moment, but not too much. But you can't use it for particulate ingredients. So, as I say, we're finalizing the last analyses and tests right now. This type of work, although we've been doing it periodically throughout the project, of course, we are only getting the final formulations towards the end of the project for the testing. But this is just an example, so these are not real data, but these are just an example of how the process, or how we will complete the process. So we take our leaching data for each of the ingredients in a particular formulation. We look at which chemicals leach the most, which leach the less. Obviously, those which leach out the most, those are the highest risk for an exposure scenario. So, for example, we would color those red here. The green ones would be the ones that don't leach out at all or very limited concentrations. So that's our exposure part of the risk assessment. Then we take the toxicity data from the skin sensitization tests. Again, high toxicity values for an individual component or ingredient. We would allocate a high toxicity ranking, and they would be red. And similarly, ones with low toxicity would be green. And then what we take then the exposure, the leaching, and the toxicity, the hazard, and that forms the basis for making the risk assessment. So the worst case is when you have a chemical that is both high leaches to a high degree and has a high degree of toxicity. So those are chemicals we would prioritize for replacement going forward. And ideally, what we want to see is low leaching chemicals and low toxicity. So you want green chemicals. Those are the ones that we're very, very happy with and would take forward and recommend for use where possible in the formulations. So that's the approach that we have implemented here. Just a quick summary reflection. It's important to note there are many ways of conducting safety assessments, and that these need to be selected on a case-by-case basis. So we sat down at the beginning of this project and we looked at the situation, we looked at what we were working with, the possible exposure routes, and we formulated our assessment approach based on that. The use of standard methods like the skin sensitization tests really increased the comparability of different data sets, just not both within the project, but also outside of the project as well. What's nice with this project, the approaches we were able to select are both cost-effective and high-throughput methods. That means that they've got potential for widespread use within the safer and sustainable by design framework. And again, just to highlight that the toxicity assessment method that we used here was basically an analytical chemical approach. So we didn't use any animal cells and biological material, which is good from an ethical perspective and also good from a cost and time perspective. So I'll wrap up there and I'll hand over to Kamal, who'll talk more about the sustainability side of things. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Andy. So now I will present the environmental impact assessment that we have performed in PERFECOAT. Can you give me the access?
You should have it.
Doesn't work.
Andy, you have to.
I'll stop sharing and then I share again. Still not working. Sorry. Yeah, now it works. Sorry for that. So I will now present the environmental impact assessment that we have performed in PERFECOAT. So for that, we have used life cycle analysis, and we have assessed the entire value chain from feedstock to an ingredient production, and then also the final coating formulation, including also the end of life for these coatings. So we have evaluated the different ingredients produced by the project, namely the binders, the fillers, the pigments, and different additives. And we have done that from the early stage of the project at the design phase until the end product. And we have provided feedbacks to work packages developing the different ingredients in order to optimize the production routes and minimize the environmental impact. And then we have used also life cycle analysis to select the different components that will enter the final formulation. And we used also the LCA to compare the different concepts with the fossil-based counterpart. So the scope of the definition of this LCA study was, of course, to analyze the different ingredients and coatings, namely UV curable coatings and waterborne coatings, and compare those to the fossil-based counterparts. But for that, you have to have a bio-based coatings that has the same performance as the fossil-based one, as well as the same quality. We have used as a functional unit 1 kilogram of product, but of course you can use 1 square meter, for example, as these coatings have to be applied on surfaces. And we have only considered ingredients entering the formulation with a percentage higher than 1%, as recommended by the UNEP-CETA guideline. Sorry. The data used for these evaluations come from industry partners, from laboratory tests, and relevant sources such as the EcoInvent database or literature. But we have also used a database developed by CEPE, which is a coating and paint association in Europe. And we have developed a database that was very useful to model the different fossil-based coatings. And when we didn't have data for upscale production, especially for processes that we have investigated in this project, then we have used models to evaluate the different inputs in terms of energy and chemicals at a larger scale. In terms of environmental impact assessment methods, we have used those that were recommended, like the EN 15804, A2, EF 3.0, and CML2. in the beginning of the project, we have focused mostly on greenhouse gas emissions, but of course, we have also evaluated other impact categories, and this will be analyzed and reported in the deliverables. Sorry. Here I have displayed the results on carbon footprint for the different ingredients. I just have to use a pointer. So, unfortunately, due to confidentiality issues, I couldn't display the names of these binders and ingredients, but yeah, we still can discuss these results. So the two first ones are UV curable bio-based binders. What you see on in the blue is the CO2 fossil emissions due to the production, and then the CO2 biogenic, which is the orange, and you can it's a negative as it's CO2 that has been sequestered from the atmosphere. So it gives a credit as long as this is trapped in the product. Once it's incinerated at the end of the life, this is released back to the atmosphere, and then this credit is not valid anymore. And the sum of the biogenic and the fossil is this reported as a dot here in these bars. So what we see is that these two first UV curable binders that have been developed in the project are in the same level as fossil UV curable binders that you find in the market. So this indicates that the binders we have produced are competitive in terms of carbon footprint, and this is of course a very good result for the project. And the same goes with waterborne bio-based binder, which is in the same range as the fossil binder that you find in the market. Regarding fillers, we have also a similar carbon footprint as the calcium carbonate, but here, of course, the cost or the price of the calcium carbonate is difficult to compete with. So in that sense, although we have a similar environmental impact in terms of economy, it doesn't make sense. So these results have been obtained from the different models for industrial production, and we have, of course, taking into account possible savings in terms of energy and solvent recovery. So we saw that some height spots are mostly due to chemicals and energy input, but these results are really encouraging as we haven't really optimized the production routes, and further optimization are still possible, and we can therefore achieve really good results and outcompete the fossil-based counterparts. So these results are only indicative at this stage, as we have to bear in mind that this is a very low TRL. But yeah, this is very good results, interesting results, and we will continue working with this in future projects. Then we have used these ingredients and formulated some coatings. Here you have the example of UV curable coating, top coat formulation. So you see that the fossil component of the carbon footprint is very similar between the bio-based and the fossil UV curable top coat. And then if you add this biogenic credit, then you can really outcompete the fossil UV curable top coat. So as a take-home message from this environmental impact assessment, we have seen that bio-based ingredients and coatings have been developed, and using the LCA to guide the development from the design phase to the final product. This was very useful to minimize the environmental impact. We have to bear in mind that this is at low TRL, and even though we are at low TRL, without extensive optimization, the bio-based products were really promising and can maybe outcompete the carbon footprint of conventional fossil counterparts. The LCA has been used here to understand the different product environmental impact and identify hotspots, which was very crucial when it comes to improving the product with respect to environmental impacts. So now I will jump to the social acceptance and social study of the bio-based solutions in PERFECOAT. This work has been carried by Asya Kenzegalieva and Sigrid Daman, so I will be presenting on their behalf. The objectives were to identify and assess the potential social impact of the new solutions with a special focus on social acceptance and perceived transition potential. So for this work, we have used the social LCA, which allows to address both actual and potential impact of solutions along the whole value chain. So we started by conducting a literature review on the bio-based products in general. And then they followed the next step was to conduct several surveys with stakeholders within the project consortium, but also outside the consortium. And the results were used to perform a social acceptance study, which was the first part, and later to perform a social impact assessment, which is the part 2. And this result will feed then the social sustainability assessment at the end of the project. And today, I will focus mostly on the social acceptance study, which covers 3 dimensions. You have the socio-political acceptance, market acceptance, and community acceptance. So in terms of socio-political acceptance, the results indicate that there are many drivers at an overarching policy level, such as the EU Green Deal, the Bioeconomy Strategy and Circular Economy Plan of the EU, and many others. The survey indicates also that there is a perceived lack of direct incentives when it comes to implementing sustainable innovation. And this is basically up to the industrial actors to implement or develop sustainable innovations. With respect to the end users, there is this survey indicates that eco-labels can influence the end user, but there is a large number of eco-labels, and this is often difficult to interpret or understand from the end users, which indicate that there is a need for harmonized reporting requirements. In terms of market acceptance, of course, there is an increased importance to document sustainability, especially for products, and show whether or not they are sustainable. There's a lack of explicit and specific sustainability targets to guide the suppliers, but this already exists for some big actors which have objectives, and these objectives often translate into very high requirements for the suppliers. There are also some barriers, for example, cost and prices constitute a major barrier, but you have also barriers with respect to the quality of the product and functionality. For example, if you have a coating that has a smell or has a color fading, this is a no-go for the end user. For the value chain actors, converting the existing plants for bio-based production can represent a very high cost, and it can be also time consuming. And this can be also a challenge for the industrial actors. Finally, for the community acceptance, we have seen that land use and the risk of indirect land use can be an important matter. Therefore, it's important to document the origin of the biomass and feedstocks, as well as to have a transparency regarding raw materials origin and how this is produced. Regarding human rights and labor rights, this is the survey indicates that this was not really an issue, since most of the actors operate in Europe, and it is assumed that existing rules and regulations are sufficient to address these issues. So as a final reflections for this social study, we have seen that there are only few studies on social sustainability of bio-based coatings. This is understandable since this market is still not mature. It's still an early stage of the development. And also it's because these value chains are really complex, and therefore the data access is really challenging. but there is an increase in social sustainability and also sustainability in general, and this requires, of course, close follow-up. So, and with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kamal. And the last two speakers are Christine Lewis and Roland Steinrücken. Christine has more than 20 years of experience in the coating and ink industry and is working for Evonik Coating Additives since 2017 as one of the technical experts for decorative coatings. She focuses strongly on the development of novel additives for decorative coatings in line with the Evonik sustainability approach. And Roland Steinrücken has a degree in chemical engineering with specializations in coatings technology. In 2003, he joined the Remmers group in the Department for Industrial Coatings, where he has been the head of UV coatings R&D for over 15 years. He recently focuses on technical business development in an interface position between R&D, sales, and customer demands. Christine, I think you will start, right?
Correct. Thank you very much for the introduction. I check with you if the screen is showing properly.
Not yet.
Oh. Okay, let me check again.
Yeah, now we see your screen.
Okay, I'm switching then to the PowerPoint. You follow that?
Yes, yes. Looks good.
Okay, good. Thank you. So in the next minutes, I will share with you some of the results on end-use application. So the presentation will be split in two parts. I will focus first on the test result for water-based wall paint and trim paint. So those basically describe all the tests we've done related to coating that you apply on a wall with a decorative function. And the trim paint is basically the coating that you have on the frame of your windows, of doors, or the piece of wood that you've got at the bottom of the wall. Those are called the trim paint, if you're not familiar with it. So those will be the type of coating we'll discuss. And in a second time, then we will have Roland from Remmers, who will describe the test result for the UV curable wood coating. So I will start with some first data we have generated in architectural coating by testing some bio-based fillers. You can see on the left side, description of the guide formulation. So typically those formulation, what you have on your wall in a room, it's a PVC 80. It means it's a formulation that contains quite a lot of pigment and fillers relative to the amount of binders. So it gives it a matte finish. But on the other side, it's important to check the mechanical resistance, because the less binder you have to hold the powder, the more the mechanical resistance might tend to be weak. So that's a criteria which is very important. Of course, the decorative aspect needs to be great. The appearance should be good without defect, and the color typically white when you use here titanium dioxide. So to test the formulation, we have replaced 10 grams of the calcium carbonate, the Omnia Carb product, by the bio-based filler. And we tested in parallel the standard with this with the other formulation. And so here I'm showing you a picture in the middle of the equipment we use for the wet scrub resistance. So basically, it's a brush that will rub back and forth on top of the surface of the applied coating. And on the right side, you can see next to each other on the white, as you can see also immediately the color shift, a light color shift that you obtain when having the bio-based filler in the formulation compared to the standard on the right. And unfortunately, you can see already the substrate coming through to the black appearing is a substrate. That means that a part of the paint has been removed through the brushing, indicating that the mechanical resistance is on the weak side for the standard of the industry. But the film was looking good in terms of appearance, at least. Another type of raw material was tested. So on this slide, I'm showing material we have discussed earlier in the presentation. It's the microfibrillated cellulose called xylva from our partner Beauregard. So the test formulation here is a PVC 45 wall paint, and we tested the xylva as a rheology control or rheology modifier in the grind, so in the part with of the paint with containing all the pigment and filler. And we tested it against the standard, which is a cellulosic thickener, Tillose. And you can see maybe the use level seems a bit hard, but the xylva is a slurry, which is 10% active in water. And it's very easy to use and very compatible to use in formulation. And at the bottom of the table, you can see the let down with the binder and styrene acrylic emulsion, classical for wall paint. On the test equipment, so we've looked at the viscosity profile of the paint. We observe that with the xylva, we obtain a very nice and stable rheology, which provide exactly the right property you need for applying and for the property you need when the paint is on the wall with this type of profile, as you can see in orange. And this was stable after a week and 2 weeks at 50 degrees. So that's a very good performance. And what we looked at in terms of performance in the final coating, we applied both coating next to each other using a bar which is graduated in terms of thickness, so from 300 micron to a very high thickness up to 1500 micron. And you can see on the standard on the left side some cracking, which occurs when the thickness is increased. And with xylva, we had very smooth and nice appearance throughout the range of thickness, which indicate a robustness, improve robustness of the paint, which can, brings advantage in case paint is maybe applied a bit thicker on the corner or if there is some sagging, so it's still looking good and after all. I'm going to switch to the next data set. This time we are looking at pigment, that we obtained with the support of Chromologics, and we tested in our lab. So the pigment, the function of the pigment we've described already in the earlier webinars is mainly the color, giving the color strength to a coating and also remaining stable in time. That's the two main performance we expect when using pigment. So you have on the left side a pigment preparation, basically some water and additive to stabilize the pigment and avoiding foam creation, neutralizer for the pH, and then the main pigment side. Specific test equipment due to the small quantity of raw material that we obtain. So typically in the industry, we would not use such equipment. Here it's an ultrasonic equipment. We would use a disperser and we would have a large amount of pigment preparation, like a half a liter or a liter. Here we're working on this picture with a 50 milliliter sample. But we managed to prepare this version, and they were giving a good performance in terms of particle size. And then we tested them in a base paint and also in clear coats, as you can see the drawdown on the right, with different pigment from Chromologics, the Nature Red, and they also tested the Sustainly Red. So you can see a very nice tinting strength, which is a great result in both. The only things to work on further is to improve on the color stability long term with the exposure to the light. That's still a point to improve a little bit. Then I'm going to switch to my last set of data. This was generated by our partner, Organic Chemia. So I'm presenting on behalf of Erin Elek, who presented in earlier webinars together with me. Here we have tested the xylan and modified xylan that was introduced by Brian earlier. So they were tested as co-binders in the water-based wall paint that you can see. They were used 50% in mix with a standard binder, the Orgal from Organic Chemia, and acrylic emulsion. And so we'll looked at first the film formation, the appearance of the film, and also the main key performance in terms of chemical resistance and wet scrub resistance, again, as described earlier. So the chemical resistance, basically we make a drawdown and we place different products, so coffee, wine, mustard, as you can see on the picture, for a certain time, exposed directly to the coating, and then we clean it up and we look at the coloration in time. Also with some, you can do the test with some pens, so depending on the standards you are following. So you can see that the standard binder doesn't show any, or not too much discoloration with the use of the xylan and modification also together with the binder, we start to see some discoloration. And this also on the wet scrub test that you can see at the bottom right, after 20 cycles, we start to see the substrates show indicating that the abrasion resistance is a bit on the weak side. We would expect to really meet the standard of the industry to reach 200 cycle. That's what is accepted in terms of quality. So some result here. I think that in the next section, so Roland will take over and further discuss the use of co-binder and binders in UV wood coating with some exciting results. So thanks for that.
Thank you. I will share the screen for Roland.
All right. Thank you very much, Christine.
You're welcome.
Okay, it should work now, Roland.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'm happy to present you some of the results, what we got with the UV curable bio-based binders. And today I would like to show the two most promising bio-based binder candidates, what we got from the PERFECOAT project. Those two are based on different carbohydrate molecules, and both are chemically modified and functionalized. The first one, what's called the bio-based binder UV #1 here, it's a yellowish colored, almost water-like liquid. And especially this very low viscosity can make it pretty interesting in UV curable formulations. number 2 is looking totally different, as you can see here in this little picture. It's clear, and it's an almost gel-like, very viscous liquid. So completely different materials, and let's look into their performance. The first thing what we focused on, that's of course the UV cross-linking itself, because that's the main property what we need. Just some explanation how we did the testing. We were doing the curing with a 120 watt per centimeter mercury gas discharge lamp. We have set a line speed of 20 meters per minute for the curing, and we adjusted the UV parameters for 100 millijoule at 400 milliwatt per square centimeter. And then we simply checked how many passes under the lamp are necessary to reach a sufficient curing. So let's look first into the pure bio-based binders, of course mixed with some photoinitiator to initiate the reaction. Here we see binder number 1, and unfortunately, even after 5 passes under the mercury lamp, we still had a completely wet film, so there was no polymerization happening at all. The bio-based binder number 2, that one was looking quite different. We had a good deep curing already after 1 pass under the lamp, but to our surprise, even after 5 passes, the surface stayed very sticky, almost like an adhesive surface. So after these first results, it was clear that we have to try to move in some certain direction to improve it. And from some UV binders, it's well known that they undergo some kind of an alternating polymerization. So they need some partner monomer to show a good performance. That's exactly what we tested in the next step to see if it's maybe such a kind of alternating polymerization which needs a partner monomer. And here you see what happened when the binder number 1 was mixed with 50% of TPGDA, which is a commonly used tripropylene glycol diacrylate. And indeed, it got much better, like you can see here in the picture. The film is not wet anymore, like it was with a pure binder. But there was still some smeary surface. So the very top 1 or 2 micron of the film are still not curing sufficiently. But this was showing us for sure that with checking such mixtures with UV monomers, we're in the right direction. So we tested various of these potential mixtures, like you can see here. For the choice of monomers, we went from the difunctional tripropylene glycol diacrylate over a trifunctional propoxylated glycerol triacrylate up to a hexafunctional dipentaerythrol hexaacrylate. And you can see here in the table that this can improve the surface curing quite a lot. So with a difunctional monomer, we always have some issue with poor surface curing. But when we go for trifunctional or even higher, then the situation changes. So a 70-30 mixture of the bio-based binder with a GPTA, that was already curing after 3 passes under the lamp. The cured film was looking okay. When we changed to the hexafunctional co-monomer, the curing performance did not really improve much more. But the film was it wasn't looking really homogeneous anymore after a certain addition. So there seems to be a point when it comes to some incompatibility effects. Of course, we tested the same also for the binder number 2. As we have seen that there was a good deep curing from the beginning on and only some issues with the surface curing, we have skipped the difunctional monomer here and went directly for higher functionalities. And as you can see here in the bottom, especially with a hexafunctional DPHA, we could reach quite a good performance. We had a full curing already with 1 pass under the lamp, and it was resulting in a good surface of the cured film. So from this test series, in the end, we got 2 favorite combinations. The bio-based binder number 1 in a 70-30 mixture with a trifunctional GPTA, and the bio-based binder number 2, again in a 70-30 mixture with a hexafunctional DPHA. You can see here that the surface of binder number 2 with DPHA is described as good, whereas the previous one was just okay, especially in terms of mechanical resistance. We tried to improve that one even more with adding some fossil-based standard binder. So we combined this 70-30 mixture of the binder number 1 and the GPTA with some epoxy acrylate oligomer, and then we had immediately a good film and a reactivity which is also okay. With 2 passes under the lamp, it was fully cured. So from that point on, we had a good base to go for real formulations, and this is how they are looking. Here you see 2 UV filler formulations based on the different bio-based binders. In this real filler formulations, of course, it's not only binder and monomer anymore. Here we have some inorganic filler, the Jet Fine 2, which is a talcum grade, and makes up 1/3 of the whole recipe. And then you see here for the bio-based binder number 1, we have 28%. Which means on the organic part of the formulation, we already have a share of 42%. With a bio-based binder number 2, it's even higher. This 44% in the recipe mean already 66% calculated on organic content. So a significantly and a surprisingly high amount. Here you see how it's looking for the top coat formulations. Once again, a bit lower content for the bio-based binder number 1, because to achieve sufficient mechanical properties, we had to combine with a bit more of a fossil-based standard resin. In this case, a hexafunctional polyurethane acrylate. But still, with a recipe share of 33%, this means 40% calculated only on the organic part of the formulation. And on the other side, bio-based binder number 2, the 45% which we have here in the recipe, that means 55% on organic part. So in these recipes, you can see that it's possible to add quite a significant amount of this newly synthesized PERFECOAT binders into a UV curable formulation. And next step, what's happening right now, and it's not completely finished yet, that is to test full wood coating setups, which is described on the right side of the screen here. So what we're going to do is do some sanding on the wood first, and then the UV filler is applied in 2 steps with some intermediate curing, 25 gram and 15 gram per square meter, so 40 altogether. Then we do the curing of the filler, an intermediate sanding to get a nice and smooth surface, and afterwards the UV top coat is always also applied in 2 layers, 5 gram each, with intermediate curing, and then of course the final curing. And these surfaces will be tested and compared to fossil-based benchmark, and hopefully soon we will have some more promising results. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Roland, and thank you to all other speakers. That was the last presentation, and now we are coming to the Q&A section. And I see that there are some questions for several speakers. Let's begin with a question for Brian. Are you here, Brian? I hope everybody is still in the board. Okay. When talking about the synergies and positive effects of POS in your conclusions, what form of POS is being talked about? What R group has been tested? Since you talked about the versatility of POS properties based on the R group being used.
Yeah, thank you for the question. When it comes to MFCs, where both hydrophilic and hydrophobic POS was used, with regards to the hydrophilic, it was you have 50% active aminos and 50% fatty acid, and they also have another one which is 100% just active amino. When it comes to the hydrophobic one, it's 100% fully modified fatty acid POS. So those are the R groups.
Okay.
And yeah.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question. There's another one for you. When you were testing the scratch resistance of POS, conventional additives and mixtures of POS and conventional additives at different concentrations, you observed that the best performance was for POS at 7.5%. Can you speculate why the resistance decreased, or at least did not improve further with higher POS concentrations?
Yes, I could speculate, but because with these additives, it seems like there's a sweet spot where there's like optimal performance. So while testing like lower percentages to higher percentages, we found that the sweet spot lied on 7.5%. But I can't really speculate because we'd further have to study the surface just to see reactivity with the rest of the coating, and again, it's a synergistic effect. So many other, like maybe other components might affect how it reacts into the coating. But yeah, I think that, my best explanation is that, we test varying degrees, and yeah, like concrete study was probably beyond the scope of the project. So that could be further studied just to get a more concrete answer. But this was the best concentration we found.
Okay, thank you. And the next 2 questions are for Srdjan and Morten. To what extent can bio-based binders reduce the environmental footprint of industrial coatings, and what are the most promising feedstock for scalable production? First question.
I can take the feedstock. In general, we focus on the waste materials that have a footprint by just removal. They need to be somehow removed or burned for energy as being one of the lowest added value activity to utilize those materials. With the replacement, I do think that they have positive. However, generally speaking, whichever activity we undertake, it does provide certain CO2 release.
And the next question for you two, what innovative approaches are being explored to enhance the cross-linking density in bio-based binders to ensure better adhesion, hardness, and chemical resistance in industrial applications?
I think that Morten is better to answer this question.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, but there is still a lot to do on the modification of these bio-based compounds towards paintings and coatings. Personally, I think the acrylic functionalization of some kind is an interesting way to go, but at the moment I can't answer anything more than that.
Okay, I think that counts. The next question is for Yang. What are the current advancements in the synthesis of bio-based or renewable pigments, and how do they compare to conventional inorganic pigments in terms of color, stability, and opacity?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I would like to mention that the bio-based pigments that we would like to produce are mostly based on the natural pigment. So it's not exactly the same compound that synthetic pigment. For the firstly, I would like to mention, and because of these environmental or health issues, these natural pigments are more demanded by the customer. So that's why we want to produce these compounds. And regarding their property as a pigment, I would like to say that the property as a pigment is not as comparable as synthetic pigment at the moment, but the researchers are really trying to improve their property, especially for this fading effect and the long stability, as I mentioned earlier. So currently, most of researchers are focusing on the expanding the spectrum of the pigment, natural pigment, and the production level. In order to improve the production level, the many researchers are giving a lot of effort. And regarding this color stability and opacity, as I already presented earlier, it really depends on the pigment. So some pigments already show a quite comparable property compared to synthetic pigments, but still, as I mentioned earlier, many improvements are still necessary. So we would like to further study about this part.
Thank you. The next question, I think it's for Kamal, and yeah, for Kamal. How can the life cycle performance of bio-based coatings be accurately assessed through accelerated aging tests, and how do these results correlate with field performance data? It's for you, right?
Yeah, I guess in this assessment we have done, the use phase hasn't been included because we didn't have any test, for example, to measure VOCs and other emissions once it's applied. So this was outside the scope of the project. But of course, you can do tests to evaluate, for example, emissions during the use phase. But we assume that the bio-based products have the same quality as the fossil ones. So basically, their lifetime should be the same. But of course, if we want to be accurate, you should also see how they age and what kind of emissions they have during the use phase, which was not in the assessment we have done.
Mm-hmm. And there was a question, what the purple color meant in the CO2 graph. And
yeah, sorry if I wasn't clear for that. That was actually the benchmark, the fossil benchmarks.
Yeah. And one question for Christine. What are the major trade-offs observed between sustainability and performance during the formulation testing of bio-based coatings, and how can these be optimized?
Thanks for the question. I think on the sustainability side, we have really a good position with some bio-based material, but also if you think of the biodegradability or the VOC profile of the product. On the performance side, for example, with the co-binder, the last slide I presented, there is still some improvement we can think about with the modification of material in terms of, I mean, we need to improve on the wet scrub resistance, on the mechanical resistance, and the color. Those are the main things which are expected from the industry. So I think there is still some work to do in terms of modification, but I think we're on the right track. There is a way to make the material more compatible, probably by increasing compatibility of the material with the coating. The resistance should be increased.
And just to add on that, I mean, with respect to the sustainability, we haven't finished with all the assessment, but we have to make sure that in terms of cost, we have also interesting products, because you can maybe lower the environmental impact, but you may find that the cost is extremely high. So we have to find a balance between the different impacts: economic, environmental, and social.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are two questions for Roland. Do you think that there is potential for bio-based binder UV2? Is that right? Bio-based binders UV2 to be used as a bio-based adhesive, give the results of your UV curing testing?
That was indeed more or less the first thing what I was thinking about when I did those tests. When I saw the cured surface of the pure bio-based binder 2, I was thinking immediately about this could be something like for doing a UV curable pressure sensitive adhesive.
Okay, and the other one for you, how brittle are the coatings in cured form, especially the bio-based binder UV2 and DPHA 7?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
I cannot really give an answer in terms of some numbers, but they are definitively less brittle than one would expect from such a mixture. So this carbohydrate based binders, I mean, despite having the sugar ring structure, they are softer and more flexible than you would probably expect. So the brittleness is I think not any big issue with this combination.
Mm-hmm. I found two more questions for you, Roland. Could you please clarify how a combination of fossil-based binder and bio-based binder would qualify as a bio-based coating for wood coating? You have used a fossil-based reactive diluent to increase the curing of the coating, but doesn't that not make a non-bio-based coating?
It's a mixture,
Yeah.
and right now we definitely have a big interest and even the requirement among our customers to deliver bio-based materials, but that does not mean that it shall be a 100% bio-based coating. So for at least for the customers which we are supplying to, it is normal that there shall be some constant progress, and that the bio-based content within the formulations shall increase step by step over the years.
Okay, and one last question for you. Will the UV binders will be commercially available?
Hopefully, yes, in not such a far away future. Because, as I said, the demand is definitively there. And right now, the offer of potential UV curable raw materials with a significant renewable content, it's not so much what is available already today. So from our point of view, we definitely hope that such binders like we tested here within the PERFECOAT project will become available. Hopefully soon.
Okay, and two last questions in more general. Based on the results of your project to date, what are your views on the possible applicability of bio-based materials for coatings used in the industrial and marine segments, where protection against steel corrosion is the primary function of the coating, and for this reason, the polymer, for example, plastic content of the coatings is significantly higher than in the DIY architecture segments. I hope you have a question. It's not addressed to anybody special, maybe for everyone.
Maybe I can just step in for that. So basically, the developments that we have had in this project are giving us some leads in many different directions. So in principle, so we have learned quite something about this concept that we have implemented in the project here. And there are also possibilities to apply those to applications that are not directly targeted within this project. So we have certain leads. We have even certain follow-up projects that are going, for example, more towards the marine field. There are specific developments that are needed for those applications. And so we have some basic results that we are following up in subsequent projects. And of course, the requirements for different environments than wood coatings and architectural coatings are different, and then that requires specific follow-up activities and then follow-up developments. But we have certain leads in many different directions from this project that are going beyond what we have as a main focus in the PERFECOAT.
And one last for you, Alexander, to conclude. Now you're at the end of the project. Are there any aspects of the project design that you would have changed based on the knowledge generated during the project? And how would you move forward if further fundings were to be made available for a follow-up project?
So the first part, we basically, when we set out the project, a lot of what we were planning was uncharted territory. We basically we pioneered on this approach and using bio-based, in particular, biotechnology-based base ingredients and using chemical or enzymatic or biotechnological means to upgrade those into and activate them. So a lot of those things that we found out and also the roadblocks that we discovered were not possible to be seen from the start. So I wouldn't actually do a lot of changes to start with, because we needed to have a scanning approach to start with. And of course, we have some very nice leads. We have also identified a lot of challenges, of course. And some of those most promising results are already taken further into follow-up projects. And we are also discussing some other opportunities, specifically from within the consortium or also external partners, to bring further towards different applications. So I mentioned the marine field, where we already have a project, and we also have activities on some specific ingredients at the national and international level. So it's already going on, but we are, of course, still looking into the landscape, how we can acquire additional funding in order to build on what we have achieved in this project.
Thank you. So I think we may cut here with the Q&A, and you already said a few words in the direction of closing, but I hand over to you for the last closing words.
Yes, thank you. So I hope you can see my screen again. For some main conclusions from the project. So we have followed this, implemented this modular approach, and we have implemented a technology platform which is relatively broad, with several new ingredients that have been generated and tested. Of course, several have failed in the tests, but have given us some clues about how to continue working. We have identified some key problems and key challenges with respect to natural pigments, for example, but are addressing this and increasing. But we also have looked into several things that we didn't envision to start with. For example, working on fillers, microbial cell mass as fillers, which has not only the filler function, but also some functional properties that may have applications, for example, for sensing UV, or for removing certain ingredients or certain unwanted compounds from the air. So we have made some additional things beyond that original platform. So of course, what Roland was showing, so we have our most promising results towards the UV curable clear coats, and we are confident that we will reach our target of 25% bio-based content. We are still doing some calculations, but so we are confident to, within the next month, be able to conclude that we are beyond that 25% target for this. On the contrary, we had some issues on the waterborne paints. We still have some activities ongoing to make some checks on some compounds, but there on this part, we mainly generated new insight into how to go further there with additional R&D. And so this is one of those fields where we definitely think that we need to have additional research at a low TRL level in order to also solve this. Of course, we have had a broad spectrum of dissemination activities. So we have several publications already out, and there's also additional publications that are in the pipeline. We had an exploitation workshop earlier this year, and we have this webinar series of five webinars that I hope have been informative for people. And as I said, we have several spin-off projects that are already ongoing, while others are in development and currently being discussed. So we are open for collaborations based on what you have seen in these 5 issues of this webinar. So and with this, I just want to acknowledge our partners in the project, our industry partners, our research partners. Special thanks to Nova for organizing also this webinar, in addition to all the great contributions in the project. And of course, BBI, CBE, Bio-Based Industry Consortium, and the European Commission for the funding. And with this, I would just like to extend a special thanks to all the project partners, all the contributors from our view as the coordinators here at SINTEF. That it has been a pleasure coordinating this project because of the motivation that we have at all partners, and I really appreciated all these great discussions that we've had. And with this, I would like to thank all attendants of this webinar for your attention. And if there's any questions, you can just take contact and also, of course, follow the remainder of the project on our website and also on LinkedIn. And with this, I would like to close and thank you very much.